What we found out is she's my baby.
Where's Ray? Ray, can you whistle? Right out, Ray.
You want the whistle?
Ray, thank you very much, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
That means sit down.
Sit down.
It's like someone chewing.
Bring some food and sit down. Okay, I neglected a couple of announcements. One of them Pete wants to make in just a minute, but I want to also point out that this is a big week for ham radio because the Dayton Hamfest, I don't know if they call it the Zinnia Hamfest. It will always be Dayton to me. The Dayton Hamfest is this coming weekend, and some club members are going. Where'd he go? You want to say anything, Kevin, about Dayton? Who's going to Dayton? I'm not actually. And you are, and so is Scott. Anybody else? So there's two over here. There's George. He's going. All right, so you guys take your hats with you and hook up out there. Okay. And Pete wanted to say something. Pete, here's Pete. Let me go over to Pete. He wants to talk about apparel, which will be the reason why you need to get your hat before you go to Dayton. Oh, it's too late for that.
It is. Recently, like maybe within the last couple of weeks, I sent out 2 emails to the VWS General Reflector, one for club embroidered items, which are the hats and the green shirts and the black jackets. The second email covered field day items, T-shirts, hats, pins, mugs, and so on. I'm going to send the order in this coming week. Today is Friday, so it'll go in either Monday or Tuesday. Please get that stuff, your requests, into me before, say, the weekend, so I can put together the order and we can send it in and we can get it back in a timely manner. Don't worry about the money. I trust you. And I've trusted several other people too. So if anybody wants to buy a couple of used green shirts with someone else's call letters on it, come see me. I can make you a good deal on those.
Cover it with duct tape.
Thank you.
And that's for field day memorabilia as well as club memorabilia. All right. So we're going to have a wonderful presentation on field day, which, as you know, is coming right up. In fact, it's less than 2 months away. And KJ4 PZP Gary is our trail boss, and he's going to tell you about what to expect and what he needs. Take it away, Gary.
Okay, thank you, Bill, and thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Before I start with the slide deck, I just wanted to mention that what I plan to do is go through the slides fairly quickly. Some of them have some amount of detail, but what I want to do is, and will do, is share the slide deck with the club. Doug's assistants or Mike's assistants to figure out how to put it on the website and so forth. But in short order, the presentation will be there for you to look at and dig into and spend time with it. So let's see. I welcome any constructive feedback having to do with field day as I go through this. I would ask for you to hold your questions till the end. So if we run short of time, I'm willing to stay here as long as necessary, including the parking lot, to talk about anything and everything. Also want to point out that my presentation, I'm not going to get into every detail and so forth with field day because there's just not enough time in one meeting to do that. But as I go through it, I would encourage anybody to that wants to participate and volunteer to work with the team leads and let them know that you want to be spend time operating, or you want to spend time helping with the cooking or mess tent or whatever the situation is, and make sure they get that point across, because I can't manage everything. I'm going to try, but all the details have kind of got to be delegated down, which is my intent. So that said, I'm ready to go ahead with the slide deck here. So let's see if I can get this clicker to work. All right, so here's some goals and objectives. I've got some personal goals at the beginning, and I've got field day goals and club goals at the end. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I need to get through the rest of the slides, but I think a lot of it kind of makes sense. My approach is not to micromanage or delegate or dictate, but lead by example, ensure safety and fun for all, and get support from as many people as possible. A brief personal story. Last year was my first entry into the club. I was not a member yet, so I came to field day, and Nancy and Rebecca and Pete and Dennis and John Birch and several other people that I met had an impact on me. And so consequently, I enjoyed my experience enough that I got the membership and joined the club right after that. So at that time, I didn't have my general class license yet, so I wasn't on HF. And I did shortly take that test and pass it. And then, again, through the gracious goodness of the club and all its members, I was able to take the extra class that was held in the early spring and pass that test. So trail boss, you might wonder, why me? Well, perhaps I'm the victim of circumstances or drew the short straw, but I like to think people recognized that I've got some abilities and skills and sought me out, and I volunteered to do it.
That's it.
Yeah, so Pete asked me, and I couldn't turn Pete down. So I do have 25 years experience in project management with the government and field engineering and stuff, so I've got some useful skills, I believe. Expectations, I want to set the expectations a little bit. My role, as I see it, is a coordinator and herding the cats and making sure people play nice and everything comes off safely and successfully. What I am not willing to do and don't have time to do is to micromanage all the details individually. And although I have created project management Gantt charts and control gates and milestones, this is a volunteer effort. I'm not willing to do that for this project. So anyway, I thought you should know some expectations. Accountability and documentation. As I've been drinking through the fire hose and trying to come up to speed, there's a mix of stuff I was given at the beginning and today, and I'm going back to try to find PowerPoint slides about the presentation last year, similar to this I'm giving tonight, and I wasn't able to find it through the website. I did find a video that Mike gave on a wrap-up, and so I've been trying to watch that, but I haven't had time enough to take enough notes on that. So anyway, I wanted to say that I am accountable and I am responsible, and I hope to improve that documentation by the end of it. My goal is to leverage personal members' strengths, skills, experience, passions, motivations, and achieve success. And then you can see kind of the last thing. So a couple of quotes, and this is my interpretation of the first one here. Okay. These I view as the big items. Fortunately, the venue, the park, has been reserved by Pete, so that's taken care of. And probably one of the second most critical things is the porta potty rental has been reserved. This is the date and the setup and operations time. I think most people know. It's a 24-hour event with setup starting on Friday around 2 p.m. and then closing at 2 p.m. on Sunday with tear down or consolidation of the equipment back to the storage shed afterwards. I seek everybody's involvement that's interested as much as possible. Everybody needs help, and I encourage everybody to assist with any public outreach that's out there. Anyway, I'm going to go on from this slide, but you can kind of see the major things. All right, so this is blank when you see it, and that was kind of on purpose. So we'll see what happens here. Yeah, so these are some amount of the details, and I'm not sure the best place to stand here, but and I'm just going to kind of roll through these fairly quickly. You can review them in detail later. So some of these items are somewhat taken care of. There's lead people identified. Okay, so these are the team leads that have been identified so far, and I think they were shared in an email I sent out, but what I would encourage is anybody that's interested in helping with the mess tent and cooking and food preparation, you contact Mike and so forth, and similar on any of these kind of functions. I guess one thing I'll mention on public outreach, Harry really is the point person for that, but I would also encourage anybody that's got any personal contacts at a college or a scout group or anything like that to assist as necessary, because I think personal relationships matter and are important, and sometimes you get more response that way versus an email or a flyer. Here's a Google Earth map of the antenna planning, and realize this is a work in progress, and some level of detail may or may not be in here as far as where the mess tent is and all the various things. So again, that'll be worked to more detail later. Some of the concerns have to do with ingress and egress to the mess tent and other critical functions, even the medical area, to not run over tent stakes and guy wires and all that. So that's one consideration. Also, the antenna alignment's important, and then where everything kind of fits in, so the mess tent food smell doesn't flow into the other tents and so forth. So again, kind of a very busy slide, but you can kind of see some of the broad areas that I think people need to be cognizant of. And there were some comments that sometimes in the past some people visited and were kind of turned off from operating or given kind of the cold shoulder. This is a public event and it's a public presence, so it's important to put your best face forward and find some ways to accommodate visitors and make them feel comfortable. We always need new members. And then some other things down towards the end have to do with in some past field days and people's attempt to try to get things done on Sunday as things cleaned up. Sometimes people were taking people's personal gear and taking it over to where it was being aggregated to go towards the loading or to the storage shed. So just be cognizant that some of this stuff might be personal and kind of get buy-in with whoever's has it. Here's some brief statistics I pulled from the 2018 wrap-up report. Again, I just did QSOs. I didn't go into all the detail about who scored the most points or the multipliers or the total score, but you can certainly see from here that 40 meters and 20 meters were the some of the most active bands. I was a little surprised that 10 meters got such a great hit here, so I thought that was rather interesting. And then even 6 meters got, significant quantity, so I assume that was John, KMU. And then the two things at the top, those were questions I personally had and so far haven't been able to come up with an answer. So if anybody does have answers to those and can tell me, let me know, because I think it would be useful as a gauge of success. Here's some safety issues. I haven't had a chance to talk to John Birch in detail about this, but these were some rough cut at some of the items I thought that ought to be addressed or talked about or focused on. Everything from guy wires on tents to people using pneumatic launchers to potential fires or medical situations, so and everything in between. I haven't yet, so if you can send it to me or point me in the right direction, that'd be helpful. I want to give thanks to Corey for donating a laptop, to Doug for donating a laptop, to Mark for donating the ICOM 7300, and if I missed anybody, I apologize up front, but I think I've captured the main things, and then all members that want to participate and join in the festivities. Recruitment and volunteer needs, everybody needs some help. So I ask you to seek out the team leads, team captains, and show kind of where your interests and efforts are. Everything from cooking and food preparation, the mess tent needs people. The grounding team lead, the second item I have there, John Acton has volunteered to do that. He's going to work with Mike, WAHZ, to do it properly and get some training on that, and then implement it with the team so that there's some consistency with grounding of the generators and also grounding of transceivers and stations. And then I guess the last thing has to do with everything finishing on Sunday. All right, so communications are going to be using the simplex frequency, and then I provide my cell number here and John's cell number here. I could have gone on and on with everybody's cell number. Everybody's got access to the membership list, and hopefully you'll put whatever you think you need on your own cell phone. And the whistle kind of comes into play because of CERT. You know, God forbid something serious happens, maybe 3 toots on a whistle might get people's attention, but everybody kind of needs to be cognizant of the weather, which certainly happened last year with rain and storms coming, to make everybody safe and cease operations or start closing down or unhooking antennas or whatever's necessary to be safe. These were some flyers I found on the ARRL website, and I thought it was an interesting approach to pitch to young people to get them interested in amateur radio. As most everybody here knows, amateur radio is much, much more than just transceivers and talking and operating Morse code. It can be a leapfrog to an engineering career. It can help with people's math and science acumen, and everything from 3D printing to writing software code. I mean, there are just many things that potentially appeal to young people. Similar type things. So I believe the go-to folks and the public outreach folks are going to get some amount of this stuff from ARRL. The price is very cheap, and there'll be flyers or handouts to offer people. A few more quotes. You can kind of look at those more at your leisure, but I kind of like this one the best, I think. So I wanted to, most of the rest of this are pictures, but some of these kind of are springboards to talking points. And so I had a chance to get together with Joe Sable and go out to the storage location one day. And afterwards, at some point in time, I talked to Pete a little bit about the storage shed. And he mentioned that when he came on board, many of the board of directors or leadership at the time had actually never been out there and had no idea what was involved with how it was set up and so forth. So really I want to give a lot of credit and kudos to Joe for his inventory control, and also to Pete for making things. So this cart here that's got posters and maybe ground rods and other things are in these PVC tubes, and he made that wooden cart. So I think the club owes a big debt of gratitude to Pete and his what he's contributed to the club over the years. I don't know exactly which antennas these are, but many people here probably do, so I assume those go to field day. Okay. Here's an example of something else Pete made, this woodworking hand cart for power cords, and coax are on the other side of that. I just wanted to demonstrate something real quick. No, well, yeah, I guess so. Just real quick, if I can get this off. When you're rolling up power cords and coax, this is not the way to do it. And who knew, you know? I didn't. I've done that before. So anyway, there's kind of a proper way to do it so they don't get tangled and damaged and so forth. So some point in time, Pete's going to demonstrate some of that. So, let's see. These are the grills. They look very heavy, and Nancy is going to pick them up with her trailer and transport them to the venue site. But in case people have never been to the storage locker, you can kind of see what we're talking about for size and weight. Okay. These boxes, my understanding, have, I think there's 2 of them, and they look big and heavy, and they have the spider beam antennas. And so, anyway, my understanding is those have got to be pulled out of the storage shed and out the hallway, and then they've got to be transported to the elevator, and then they've got to be stood up at some angle to fit in the elevator, and then down and loaded into the thing. So, not a trivial task, which is why we need strong young people with a hardy back to help with some of this loading and unloading. Another view of the cart that Pete made. Some hand carts, the tents were at the bottom. And this is just an example of one of many organizational things that, how well it's organized and labeled. And I'm sorry? Yeah, the shelving also, I believe Pete made and did, or maybe somebody else did, I don't know. Yeah, that's what I thought. So this is the grounding plan that Mike, WAHZ, had submitted and will be implemented through training with John. So the idea is the generators are going to be grounded and stations are going to be grounded. Here's some further details, and certainly not all inclusive, but you can see some of the minutia or some of the level of details that need to be happening. If you don't have fun, it's your own fault. And if the porta potty backs up, try to have some contingencies. Yeah, it probably is your fault, but maybe carry an extra roll of toilet paper or 2 in the thing. And I guess you could do a cert thing with a bucket and plastic, but I don't think anybody really wants to do that. So it might be good to kind of learn what is close there. That's either 24/7 if you can't get home. So. So the rest of this is just pictures, and if somebody wants to assist me with maybe going through this, or if somebody knows PowerPoint how to kind of set that automatically to go, but that's essentially what I have to say. So my thought is to open it up to questions, and then if there's questions, any of the team leads can assist with any of the answers.
Sure. Somebody that's working out of the trade, so myself, wear heavy gloves.
Right.
It is awfully easy to scrape your hands and get cut up,
Right.
moving things around and dragging things in and out.
So to Roger's point, having to do with wearing gloves and when lifting and everything, I noticed in some of these pictures you'll see there's some other potential talking points, but there's some amount of no shoes, or some amount of no gloves, or some amount of one person wearing gloves, and I personally have gotten rope burns on my arm with using the pneumatic launcher and getting the rope tangled around my arm or leg, and so beware. And the same with poison ivy and some of those other things. So, Bob.
So I've got 2 small things. One is, some past years we've had a hand washing station by the porta potty. Some we haven't. I would recommend, if we can pull that off, just having the water on a table again or something. It works a little better than just the wipes.
Right.
The other one is the spider beams. I know during the teardown last year we broke one of the links on the chain on one of the stakes on one of those as we were taking it down, and it was flagged for repair, but I don't know if it ever got inspected. So you probably want to have someone inspect the stakes on the hex beams. So just one brief comment about that is as antennas are being set up, or even the tents, there's a proper way to do that and to take them down. And so follow either the band captain or the specific antenna's lead, somebody that knows what they're doing with that antenna, whether it's the spider beam or the moccasins or anything else complicated, to make sure it gets done properly and stuff not damaged, because some of this stuff is very expensive. Other questions? Brendan?
Just a comment about the clam shelters that the club has invested quite a bit of money in. If you have been a backpacker, a Boy Scout, or a person that uses tents in the past for any reason, you need to lose all that knowledge, because these are really unique tents and they're self-contained. And there's a video that I shared. If would you mind sharing that with everybody?
Right.
Just take a look at the video, and if you don't, I just don't want these tents to be broken. They're hard to replace and they're very expensive. So they're literally a one-person job. and I can show you how to do it, or we can bring a tent to one of our next meetings and we'll do a demo at the front. It's the simplest thing. It takes literally 45 seconds to do, but it's not like putting up any other tent. And I think last year or the year before we had an experience where we brought a tent and literally 6 people volunteered to work on the one tent at the same time, and I was the rude guy who said, no, everybody step away from the tent because you're going to pull it and break it. And on these particular tents, everything's already built and already included, and all the rods are already tensioned properly and everything, and really all you need to do is do it the right way. So we'll go through that process probably once or twice. And if you have a question about how to put up your tent at field day, come and find me or somebody that's expressed knowledge in that field, and literally 45 seconds later we'll have your tent up for you. So please be careful with the tents.
Yeah, Brendan did share the video with me. I haven't had a chance yet, but my intention is to pass that to Doug or Mike and get assistance to put it on the website in whatever fashion that's done.
Or you could just go out and search for Clam. They're a company. They are well known for ice shelters. That's really what they're known for. And they make, they're called shelters, clam shelters. If you just do a Google search for clam shelters, or a YouTube search, there's like 110 videos on how to, some are.
Dozens of bad ones.
Well, I'll use the one Brandon sent me.
Well, look for the ones that are by the company Clam, C-L-A-M, and they're the right directions.
We ran out.
We have enough.
We have enough. We bought some more.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? So that's more?
Yes, that's good.
Brendan, would you like to comment
About this?
Well, so I don't see a safety offer stopping traffic, but no, that's okay. That's fine.
Okay, well,
if you need to.
Yeah, one person commented to me that you take the risk of damaging the fiberglass struts and some of that by
You
moving
do,
it that
because
way.
they are under tension, and if you
Right.
tension them differently by lifting it like this, you could potentially rip either the seams that they plug into or bend the poles improperly. So the better way to move that tent across a road or to another location would be to disassemble it, because it literally takes 20 seconds to disassemble it, and then put it where you want it, and it literally takes 45 seconds to put it back up. So think about that.
Okay, other questions, please.
Mike, or Pete.
Thank you. One of the major things that we're going to do differently this year, and that is we're going to inventory all the items that go back into the locker underneath the mighty oak out in the field, and they'll make sure that they're inventoried and everything is in the proper container before they're loaded on the trailer. Last year when we got back to the locker, we had to go and inventory all the bins and rejigger the cables, and it just took a long time and it was very hot. So we're going to do it out in the field, and Joe is going to be there, and John Transu is going to help, and we're going to make sure that everything is ready to go into the locker before it goes into the trailer. Then the only thing we have to do when we get to the locker is just take it off the truck and stick it on the shelf.
And let me pick up on that. So one of the after action items from last year was the mess tent went down as soon as the mess team was done with it, because we were done with it. And frankly, we needed to get it back to Fort Belvoir. But Joe has asked that we keep the mess tent up longer so that the inventorying and the assembly of stuff into the containers is done under shelter. Because although you could say we were a mess last year, we were also working in a rainstorm. Okay, so there were some extenuating circumstances that drove that. Gary, could you go back, and if you did it, excuse me, I missed it. There's some big hug things. We get the antenna team starting on Friday. We get other things set up on Saturday. Can you kind of do the big movement activities of when they occur and when, therefore, we need volunteers?
Yeah.
As I say, we don't need volunteers for antennas at 2 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, again, I need to work with the band captains and the antenna folks specifically. I plan to try to have some meeting very soon with Leon and Lee and some other people in that group to discuss some of those action items and concerns and come up with a game plan and then share that with people. But I don't have all those details now. I mean, but you're right. I mean, initially, you need people to use pneumatic launchers or slingshots to get the lines up over the trees and prep things before the antennas are set up and hung. Although some of the antennas go up in the mast, so potentially some of that could be done. But one of the first things that's going to be done, and that Pete has asked me to do, is make sure we have somebody mark where the porta potty goes. Because I guess last year the guy delivering it didn't know where it was supposed to go and almost took it back to his business. So that would be catastrophic. So we're going to do that, and then apparently he's got a time window of 8 o'clock on Friday to 5 o'clock on Friday to deliver that. So once we make sure that's in the right spot and everything, because I don't want to be moving a porta potty myself, I don't know about anybody else, but then everything else will kind of flow. But yeah, there ought to be a orchestra or a sequence of a dance to kind of figure out the natural flow of where things are set up. There's 3 trailers to my knowledge and maybe more, but the thought is that Mike, working with Tim, I believe, will pick up the mess tent in a rental trailer they have, and they will bring that to the site at some point in time on Friday after 2. The grills, Nancy will pick up and deliver again sometime after 2. And then the equipment from the storage shed, the tents, the antennas. So I guess Mike is right. There needs to be some logical, organized sequence of that before somebody just starts pulling everything out of the trailer and just goes hog wild with setting up tents and everything else, and things are conflicting. The other thing that Mike Danhart that I talked to this morning mentioned that was an issue last year is to make sure that signs are posted properly for a temporary road closure, because he said last year there was some amount of people coming through the road that we have to get to the golf course, and they were having to turn around and come back, and so they were going over antennas or related equipment we're using, and it was just not only a safety thing, but it took the risk of damaging what we have. So we need to make sure that gets done very early on. So again, as those details are fleshed out, I hope to post them and get buy-in and consensus long before the day arrives to do it. And then I still am going to rely on the team leads to assist.
Traffic cones, the field day, for the Winterfest.
Yeah.
We should bring them along and put them along the road.
Right. So Pete has mentioned some traffic
cones and even putting light sticks on wood inside them for night. But yeah, we need to do something like that and put a sign there that temporary road closure due to Vienna Wireless Field Day event, to make sure it's not like a permanent sign or something somebody gets all upset about. So yeah.
The sign we need.
I'm sorry?
No through traffic.
Right. So
and in fact, we can ask the golf park to put the chain up on the far end of the road.
okay. Other questions? Ross, did you have a question?
Not really. I just want to mention I actually have one of those road flagger signs.
Oh, sweet.
Stop slow. So if you want to borrow that, you can.
Sweet. Yeah, anything with lights or sirens would be great.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Brendan, go ahead.
I have a comment and a question. I got confirmation today, I can't remember, via email that the Virginia Communications cache will definitely be visiting again. So they'll have their air conditioned trailer and their show and tell toys and their satellite gear and all that stuff to show off. So no, they're not. We're kind of figuring out a better place, maybe up the road a little bit further, because last year they got stuck on the mud and the grass, but that's GOTA and my MCOM display is moved to the other side of the road now, so that's kind of occupying that space. They need a big area to move that 32-foot trailer and the 14-foot van that pulls it. So we'll kind of be like a day of call, but we'll also want to get them into a high-vis spot instead of hiding them, because the air-conditioned trailer is always a nice feature on a hot day.
Right. All right. Any other questions? We do have some amount of time left. If we want to somewhat round robin go to the major people like Mike with the mess tent and the food, or Leon talking a little bit about the antennas. There's not a lot of time, but anyway, is that
Okay. Hey, Gary.
okay? All right.
So,
5 more minutes.
All right. Cancel that idea. Other
So-
questions?
So
Lee?
Gary, one quick comment.
Yeah.
This has been discussed at length in the antenna group, Leon and myself and a number of other people, and that is
kind of a feedback from last year. We need to get at least the antennas on the site earlier than we did last year. We really need to have them come in shortly after 2 o'clock. So however we want to try to make that happen, load them up Thursday night, you know, have the van sitting parked at Pete's house. I don't know. I don't care. But
Yeah, we've actually...
Because last year, they were literally putting up antennas Saturday afternoon, and we don't want to do that.
Right, right. No, that's a good point, and I've actually talked to both Pete and Nancy about potentially doing that, to pick the stuff up Thursday or Wednesday or whatever they agree upon that they can do, and then stage it somewhere else, not bring it to the site until the 2 p.m. bewitching hour, 24 hours in advance on Friday. But one of the reasons for that is to try to mitigate risk, because almost every week there's a semi overturned or a dump truck or some traffic problem within the whole area. And then what happened to me the one day I went out to the storage shed with Joe Sable is that we got out there and somebody was parked in front of the door for the elevator. So they were loading boxes and, you know, doing all kinds of things like somebody had moved out of a house or into a house. And so what happens if you go out on Friday and do that, then you're kind of log jammed. At least if you do it on Thursday and that happens, you've got some other time windows. So yeah, it's a good point, and I think we can address that hopefully.
All right, thanks everybody. You want to say something?
You need to find the transportation lead, and he needs to get volunteers to come out, say Thursday, and load up the trailer.
Right. Yeah, I've actually asked Joe to help with orchestrating that or finding the people. Just a couple other small points. Several people have sent emails in volunteering or offering to help in whatever the way they can. I'm probably going to send out another email, but it would be helpful if you're willing to do that you kind of express what activities you want to help with and also what days you're available to help with. And then the other thing I found out talking to Howard is he's going to be out of town during field day. And then unfortunately I found out today that Mike Danhart is going to be out of town for field day. So there might be other people. I've only been a member less than a year, and so trying to figure out who actually lives out of state and who's available. But can I see a brief show of hands about how many people are going to participate in a field day this year? Yeah. All right. Great. I realize some people might have conflicts with personal activities or vacation or whatever, but anyway, that's great. So I guess the only other thing I would add before I close is that whatever we didn't cover tonight, we need to flesh out in more detail. I'll work with Bill and Leon and other people in the club to stage some time downrange before field day to try to work in some of those details.
Well, thanks very much for all that work. Let the fun begin. I want to say a couple of quick things. First of all, Tour de Cure is coming up when? June 2nd. See him to sign up for Tour de Cure. And the next meeting is going to be held at Thoreau Intermediate School, Thoreau Intermediate School, 2 weeks from tonight. That's the 24th, and your host is going to be none other than K6 BFA, Pete. So thanks, everybody, for coming. Enjoy your weekend, and stay dry.